Eastern Fairfax County, Senator Surovell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking to the bill, or the substitute.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't want to rain on the compromise parade here and all the happiness, but I just want to point out that I don't like the compromise. I like most of it. I just don't like the insurance limit. I'm going to explain why. So typically, when you're dealing with any kind of a commercial situation, most businesses carry at least $1 million policy. It's rare that I see less than $1 million. Cabs tend to have about 300. I think that's by statute. They tend to carry 300. What we're doing here is we're creating a brand new category, different from everything else, that says $100,000 is enough. And what concerns me is that $100,000 isn't enough. It's rarely enough. Personal injury is not all my practice. It's a little bit of it. But I can tell you that the number one problem that occurs in representing people that get injured through no fault of their own. I want to remind you, it's through no fault of their own. It's through some chance occurrence. They're out there minding their business, taking their kid to school, driving to work, running an errand. They get hurt through no fault of their own. The number one problem is there's not enough coverage. $100,000 in today's world is enough to cover an injury, moderately severe soft tissue injury, maybe something involving one surgery. It doesn't come close to covering the expenses associated with a hospitalization or, God forbid, a permanent injury. This is recognized in federal policy. Federal policy for carriers requires any vehicle under 10,001 pounds to carry at least $300,000 of insurance. We're creating a special sort of sub-Virginia category of 100. And there's a reason for 300. It's because commercial vehicles tend to do more damage for a lot of different reasons. And I just want you to think for a second about the policy distinction we're drawing here. The policy distinction we're drawing is that we're making the policy judgment. We're making the policy judgment that these people that are going to be driving around, making deliveries, trying to earn stars on these apps, right? Because the more positive feedback you get, the better your ranking is, the more likely they are to use you again. So you're going to have these people that are incentivized to make these deliveries on time as fast as possible, get as much positive feedback as possible, driving around with whatever it is, a pizza in the back of their car, a package in the back of their car, something in the back of their car, and they're going to be in a big hurry to get that there on time. And what happens when people get in a hurry? They hit people. They hit cars, they hit people, they hit bikes, they hurt people through no fault of their own. From my perspective, this group of people who we are giving a lesser limit of insurance to are more likely to get into collisions. Yet we are putting in code a policy that says they should carry less coverage. And that concerns me, Mr. President, because this is something we've seen again and again and again in this body. We keep voting for immunity. We keep voting for lower insurance. And I'll tell you, every single time you push a green button for immunity or you push a green button for insurance, all you're doing is shifting responsibility. You're shifting responsibility from the person who caused it or the corporation who enabled it, the business who caused it. You're shifting it over to the person who's hurt through no fault of their own. You're shifting it over to our Medicaid system and our taxpayers. And that's just not a policy. And in fact, for that matter, you're shifting it over to bankruptcy lawyers because when these people get hurt and their lives get altered, that's often where they end up because they cannot get fully compensated for not only their medical bills, but for their lost income and their changed lives. That's what this $100,000 limit effectively represents. And Mr. President, what concerns me is I don't think it's fiscally conservative. I don't think it promotes individual responsibility. I don't think it promotes accountability. And as somebody who has to sit in my office and talk to people and look them in the eye and explain to them, I can't do anything more for you. I know this is going to change your life, but that's just how it is. I can't sleep well at night putting a green light on this. And so while I think a lot of work has been done, I really think that we ought to acknowledge federal policy and leave it at 300, just like everybody else does.
Mr. Chairman.
The senator from Grayson.
Would the gentleman yield for questions?
Which gentleman?
The gentleman from Fairfax.
Yes, sir. Would the gentleman from Eastern Fairfax County yield for a question? He yields, Senator.
The gentleman keeps talking about these incidents where they're putting the public in danger and all the things that could occur. Does the gentleman have statistics on how many TNC drivers were involved in accidents and how many of them actually pose a threat to society as we know that they've been in existence for 2 years?
The senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
Mr. President, I tell the gentleman I don't have any statistics, but I have had people contact me who have been injured while riding in TNC vehicles, but not anyone who was injured by somebody making a delivery
Thank
of
you.
the product.
Mr. President, gentleman yield for another question.
The senator yield for an additional question.
Sure.
He yields, Senator.
Would the gentleman be aware that in 2016 calendar year, vehicles involved in crashes by special functions such as taxis, school buses, accounted for 237,000 accidents, and only 116 of those were TNC drivers?
The senator from Eastern Fairfax.
I would say to the gentleman, I'm not familiar with those stats, but they wouldn't surprise me given that this TNC is a brand new thing, and I think it's rapidly growing, and I would expect that number would continue to grow, probably exponentially as
The
we go
senator
forward.
from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. President. The senator from Eastern Fairfax rise for a question.
Would the senator from Eastern Fairfax County yield for a question?
Happily.
He yields, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask the gentleman, does the policy limits limit how much you can sue a company for, or let me rephrase that, can they sue above the policy limits on a litigation case for injury?
The senator from Eastern Fairfax.
Mr. President, I would say to the gentleman two things. Number one is no, you can sue for anything you like, but as most of us who practice law have learned, it's usually pretty hard to get blood from a rock, and there's not a whole lot of people that have a lot of money laying around to pay a judgment. And it's my perspective, at least, that these TNC companies are going to be hiring these folks as independent contractors, and that often the company itself is not going to be liable, but the individual will. And most of these individuals probably don't have a lot of money, which is why they're driving, delivering pizzas or products.
The senator from Spotsylvania.
Mr. President, I have one more question for the senator from Eastern Fairfax.
The senator yield.
Absolutely.
He yields, Senator.
In your practice, have you ever come across people that have a personal liability umbrella policy, Mr. President?
The senator from Eastern Fairfax County.
Mr. President, I tell the gentleman that every once in a blue moon I do. It's pretty rare. I'm happy to say I have one myself, and I think everybody here should also have one as well.
Mr.